The ancient Greeks used to burn down houses that were infested with mold, and as you'll soon find out, there was a very good reason for that. When we moved into a mold-infested house in Portugal, our only option was to abandon our new home.
A week after moving into a dream home, Miriam and I are now evacuating.
Mold is something that nobody wants to find in their home, but it can happen to anyone. It's a common problem in many buildings, and it's also way more dangerous than many people believe. Left unchecked, it can completely ruin your home and cause long-term and life-altering health issues. And since we've had our battles with it, I wanted to make a video breaking everything down and sharing everything we've learned, some of the best practices, and how to get rid of it. But first, let's take a closer look at what mold actually is. Mold is all around us, all the time. In fact, you're breathing in spores and likely even some mycotoxins right now. But it mostly only becomes dangerous when there is an infestation. So when you have visible mold patches on the walls or on your food, this is already bad news. As a side note here, if your bread is moldy, you just have to throw it away. There is no saving those slices. And the same goes for your jam. You can't just remove the moldy parts. For softer foods, when you see visible mold on the surface, you can be sure that the whole thing is contaminated. There are many different types of mold, and all of them have different health effects, but some of them are very deadly. Yet, many of them are harmless and do not produce any mycotoxins. It's just there is no way to know without proper testing. But from experience, I would approach every potential mold situation with extreme caution. Mold itself is a type of fungus that grows in damp or humid conditions. I imagine people in humid climates are more familiar with it, but living in Portugal next to the ocean, most were completely unaware. Some even denied that Portugal had any mold. It's almost as if they thought mold was a conspiracy theory. Ironically, because of their mostly poor and outdated building practices, almost all the coastal houses we visited had some mold growth in them. And since mold is everywhere and it thrives in moisture, there is no practical way to eliminate all mold and mold spores from the indoor environment. The way to control indoor mold growth is to control moisture and not vacuum seal your house. Houses need to breathe. Different molds can look like anything. They can be black, green, white, or even red, and they're often accompanied by a musty or earthy smell. So, visible growth, musty odor, and unexplainable health problems are a dead giveaway that you might have a mold problem. The next step is to get rid of it. If mold is a problem in your environment, you must clean up the mold and eliminate potential sources of moisture. Sometimes this even means extensive reconstruction if you have issues with rising damp, for example. Your first instinct might be to go get a dehumidifier. While these machines can help a little with the humidity in the house, they will not fix your mold issues. In fact, without adequate maintenance, dehumidifiers themselves can become breeding grounds for mold spores. For smaller, more isolated situations, such as growth in the corner shower, in your fridge, or inside your washing machine, all of which are common places for mold, you can remove it yourself. But you have to do it properly. Be sure to wear protective equipment like gloves and respiratory equipment like an N95 mask during the removal. Then spray the moldy surface with hydrogen peroxide. You can also use sodium hypochlorite, which is bleach, but if you're using the store-bought stuff instead of a hypochlorite generator, know that it's more toxic to you and actually not as effective. Then let it sit for 10-15 minutes and carefully wipe away all the visible mold. For larger mold patches, you can attempt to remove them yourself, but it's not going to be easy. If you don't properly remove the mold, and if you don't take care of the source of humidity, the mold will keep coming back. If you have mold growing on the structures, or if it's inside the walls, or if it has infected wood, you will need professional help. For example, in our experience, our landlords would have just dealt with the mold by removing it from the surface, but the problem was already structural, and it would have kept festering in the background, still harming us. After talking to multiple experts, we realized that there was no saving the house we were living in. It would have to be basically torn down to bare structures and rebuilt. So we just abandoned our new place only 8 days after moving in. And this is what can happen if you don't eliminate the problem properly and early. If you decide to find professional help, which fortunately in the US is a lot easier than in Portugal, still be careful with the company you hire. Very often, the remediation efforts can leave your home environment worse off than it was before, since many chemicals used to kill mold are also very, very toxic to humans. If you think that you might have mold problem in your house or you're experiencing mold-related symptoms, I think it's really worth trying to find an experienced building biologist to talk to and to seek advice from. And if you want to know more about the health effects of black mold and mold toxicity and how we've been dealing with it, watch this video next.